Hi everyone. Maybe you've asked yourself, how did the universe come into existence? And some of you maybe think, the Big Bang! And I want to tell you right now, a Catholic priest came up with that idea, and I think it sounds kind of silly, because why would that be a thing? Oh, because the universe is expanding, because dark energy and also blah 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 blah. What if the universe just expands slightly and contracts slightly like a heartbeat? Maybe. What if the universe doesn't expand and we just think it is because it looks like it is? I don't know, maybe. What if what if the universe is literally composed entirely of energy? Alright, that's not actually far fetched. It's actually kind of probably very true. It goes down to the Buddhist principle all is one. And what is one? All is energy. All is united or unified in energy because I guess you either have some or you don't. And none of it quite looks the same, I suppose. All right, so energy in the ether. The ether is this principle. You'll have to go and research this yourself on your own. It's got to do with nothingness, but not nothingness in the emptiness of nothing. It is the simply emptiness of the universe, of space between things. Counter space is kind of like all things, and then space is the space between things. Space and counter space. Counter space interacts with space in that it creates light. Light emits from all counter space and terminates into counter space, but it travels through space, just like when light goes through a piece of glass. Now, there's some unique aspects of this whole thing that punches holes in our current philosophy of how light and energy work. And now, to say when light travels through a piece of glass to all measurement devices, the light seems to slow down, and then it speeds up when it leaves, which ultimately means it's not a Newtonian, it's not a BB, it's not an emission. It is not like when you jump in a pool and you splash your arms around in the water. Thank you, Ken Wheeler, for this analogy. You're not emitting waves. You're simply pushing or splashing the water that's already around you and giving it motion. All right. That right there is how the first atoms are made. The first atoms are essentially portions of ether pushed into motion. And it has to do something with the fact that light travels typically in a straight line away from it, vectored away from its emission source. But if it hits a high enough frequency, if it hits a high enough emission, if it hits a high enough luminosity or energy, it doesn't travel in a straight line anymore. I say like it hits some sort of superluminal point. Essentially, the vibrations frequency has gotten so small and so tight that it's now become a proton. It literally becomes a proton, and when it does that, it no longer travels in a straight line. It now spins in a circle, and it's because it's hit some superluminal constraint. And now you can make a bunch of hydrogen out of just raw light. And this makes sense if you've heard of polaritons. Polaritons are basically where you can take light and make light reflect inside of or light bounce back and forth inside a resonating chamber, and it creates a pseudo atom or photon. It's super weird. I don't know. I'm probably butchering some of these concepts right now still, but imagine the hard light from Halo and stuff. And it has to do with having scaffoldings of energy, energized scaffolds. I say scaffolds. I don't know what the hell to call them. They're just resonating chambers, and they're the size of like photons, and you pump them with energy, and then they. I've heard like weird things like act superfluid light, which to me is really bizarre because I'm expecting light to travel in a straight line, and here it would be. I guess in this case, kind of, I don't know, subliminating or something like that. Subliminating Light? I'm like, good God. I don't know. All right. Let's get back on track here. So, that's how all matter was made. All matter is made essentially by an energy disturbance that creates elementary particles like protons. Yes. And so then all those protons gather together. I mean, if you look at it, the periodic table of elements, all they are compounds of hydrogen. You start with a hydrogen, you put two hydrogens together, you get a helium. And you put two heliums together, you get a lithium. You two lithiums together, and so on and so forth. Obviously, you don't have to do it just like that. That would be much more like Fibonacci. You literally add one hydrogen, and you keep adding one hydrogen all the way through the entire circuit, and voila, you have every element in the periodic table. Isn't that neat? And then with a system of black holes, you ultimately don't need a Big Bang. Do you realize this? A Big Bang implies that somehow everything started as a single point and then expanded out. Maybe we could have both. We could have black holes and white holes systematically redistributing matter, and then it exploding and then collapsing and exploding and then collapsing. I see images like a heartbeat, which kind of feels, I don't know, probably true to the thing. But ultimately, we don't need a universe that has a beginning or end. It's not even useful. I mean, it is if we live past this, if we live in generations past this, to whether or not the universe begins or ends. But it's not even useful to think about that. I love cosmology, and I love just science today. Because it just doesn't seem to be interested in looking up anything that matters. And then our doctors are just saying stuff like, why? The definition of words means nothing. What is the definition of a word? Why do we even need words? So that we can share meaning, okay? If we don't share it, if we don't share meaning, we don't share our time and energy and effort and all this stuff, like, just go back to being a bunch of lions living in the jungle or something ridiculous. Like, they don't have to share. They don't want to. I'm sorry, I digress. This has become a ramble. Thank you for listening. That's how the universe was made. Basically, emptiness, the ether, vibrated in a circle, and then these circles compiled themselves into everything. Voila.